go around is one of the most dangerous things there is. Many flight instructors teach that you always want to be close enough to your runway so if your engine dies, you can land on it. I disagree completely. So you'd get a group of boats, put them together. We'd be in Nunavutchik Beach and you'd have 40 airplanes in the same bay in Nunavutchik. Circling around like flies.
Welcome to the Coffee and a Hanger podcast. This episode is for entertainment purposes only. It is not to be used for flight training purposes. We recommend that you hire a certified flight instructor who is qualified to teach you in these advanced techniques that we'll be talking about. Our guest today is such a flight instructor. His name is Steve Williams, and he owns Acme Cub Training. We're going to be talking about his training philosophies, and we are going to ask him a few questions about his rich history of flying in Bush, Alaska. Enjoy.
Well, were you a pilot before you came to Alaska?
Yep.
And how old were you when you came to Alaska?
27, I think.
Okay. So you'd had quite a bit of life experience up to that point.
Yes. My dad, we moved to Casper, Wyoming when I was 16, started a machine shop. We built drive lines, and I worked for him for 10 years. And one day when I was probably 18, I saw a hang glider fly off the mountain. I got to do that. So I bought a hang glider, started hang gliding, and I flew the longest unofficial flight ever in a hang glider. Flew 200 miles, took off Whiskey Peak and landed in Montana.
Now, is that at the time it was the longest, or is
At the time, it was unofficial, so it wasn't ever recognized, but it was the longest flight in the world at the time.
What year was that?
I moved up here in 88, so it would have been about 86.
I think few people that would watch this would understand how insane that is.
How the dynamics of it?
What was the glide ratio?
Probably 8-to-1.
8-to-1, which is still not good for a hang glider.
No.
Because I bet you they got like 12-to-1 now.
Probably better than that.
Yeah.
Now. But I did in 3 thermals.
So how much altitude did you gain?
Probably 16,000, I think.
In each thermal?
The first one was 16,000.
That's how high you got, or that's how high?
Yes, I circled all the way up, and then I stayed with it, and it was probably blowing 40 up, so I was probably blowing 40 or 50. So
you were able to cover some ground.
I was getting lots of ground. I got probably over 100 miles on that thermal. So then I started flying. I decided I needed to fly airplanes, so I bought an airplane. Started flying every day. So I had my private, my instrument, my commercial, my CFI within like a year. So I got out the globe. It's like, where in the world do I want to fly? You know, and I thought about being a missionary pilot. But then you need to be a missionary pilot, you need a Bible degree. I'm like, I don't want to get a Bible degree. So I thought about crop dusting.
Are they that picky, the missionary?
The one I called. Yeah. And so
I'm sure there's one that would have taken you.
This is back when flying jobs were tough.
Right.
So I decided I was either going to be a crop duster or a bush pilot. 2 days later, I was driving to Alaska. Everybody said the only place to go get time is go to Bethel. I didn't want to go to Bethel, so I went to Dillingham. Spotted herring in Dillingham, in Togiak, and then I did the native allotment, and then I hauled deer hunters to Montague Island for 10 years. Every morning from October through December, I'd fly deer hunters to Montague.
So what is it like spotting herring? Is that something that still happens? Do they still do that?
Back when I did it, the boats would hire a pilot. So you'd get a group of boats, put them together. We'd be in Nunavutchik Beach and you'd have 40 airplanes in the same bay in Nunavutchik. Circling around like flies.
Yeah, I've heard that people that did that saying it was the most dangerous thing they've ever done.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't?
Just close your eyes.
Well, that sounds pretty dangerous to me. Anything you have to do, you just close your eyes. It's more safe than having them open. Yeah. I think it's probably dangerous, right?
Yeah, it was probably pretty dangerous. I loved it.
Yeah.
I really missed it when I quit doing it.
What did you love about it?
It was a major competition. All the pilots out, you'd have to figure out where the fish were. Mm-hmm. From the seagulls or from the sea lions or from seeing them. It was a big game to try to find them. And you're in a competition with some really high quality people.
High quality pilots.
High quality pilots. And
high quality
it had a big deal to do with your fishermen too, because they're out there looking looking with their sonars, and you're putting your information of what they're seeing on their sonar. So you'd put the two pictures together.
How many people died in the time you were doing that?
I think there was 2 mid-airs while I was doing it.
What about weather? I mean, was weather a factor, or did you?
It was. One time we're in Sitka, and we're spotting in the Class Echo airspace, and there must have been 30 of us. And Alaska Airlines came in, and we're all spotting with a special. All 30 airplanes have a special to agree to maintain separation with, and Alaska Airlines coming in, and instead of having us talk, they had a list of all of our tail numbers, and they would say, does 8976 Delta agree to maintain special VFR conditions with all the other airplanes? And all you'd say is 8976 Delta agrees. Okay, Alaska Airlines coming in, everybody exit the zone, and then he'd go down and he'd read, is 8976 Delta clear? 8976 Delta is clear of the zone. So he did an amazing job.
That would take so long to go through everyone. I mean,
but he went through us that he did all the talking instead of waiting for us to talk.
Yeah.
And so nobody stepped on anything.
just agreeing.
Everybody got out of the zone.
Wow.
And then Alaska Airlines lands, and he runs us back in the zone again to continue our opening.
So crazy.
It was awesome.
The herring spotting, like, was there a social aspect to that?
It was amazing. Yeah, we had our tent camps, and I was the cook. I always took my Dutch oven and made a pot roast, or we made really good food. We had really good food on our end of the beach.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you were the chef.
I'm the camp chef. Not so much at home, but I'm the camp chef.
Okay.
I got a dozen really good recipes.
How much drinking went on?
Not much.
Really?
Very little. We wouldn't drink. We'd go walrus hunting. We'd go beachcombing. One time I decided to give Usiks to all my friends for Christmas. I think we harvested like 7 Usiks. And then,
was that like, I mean, that's actually a pretty cool gift, but is it also kind of a joke?
Well, it's a joke. I still have one in my stairwell, you know. So it depends upon whoever I gave them to, their wives, whether they let them display them in their house, you know. One of the Usiks, the walrus was laying on his belly, and we had to work for that Usik. Most of the time, they're laying on their back, and they're easy to get.
Dude,
we worked really hard. But
hopefully, that's the thing. Hopefully, it's fresh, right? I mean,
like, no, none of them are fresh. None of them are fresh.
It's got to be one of the most fun things is beachcombing.
Beachcombing's fun. Western Alaska is a blast. One time, Ken McDonald and I were flying back from Sitka after a herring opener, and we found so many of the big glass balls. I bet we had 15, 20 of them in the airplane. We had them stacked on our laps, and we had my airplane, if we would have went in the ocean, it would have floated. And the beach from Cordova to Yakutat had them everywhere that year.
After you did that, then did you move up in your aviation career, like flying jets and stuff, or what?
My source of revenue was herring spotting in the spring, and then I turned it into float trips. My business was taking people on float trips.
So you sort of right out of the gate in aviation have almost worked for yourself like the whole time, or you had jobs?
Yeah, I worked in Dillingham in '88.
But you're not like working for another outfit as much as you're working for yourself. You're
pretty much, yeah.
Pounding the pavement, getting it done, getting the contracts,
Yep, and then I ran a hunting business, moose hunting business out of Galena for 10 years. And then I built a business in Bethel. We built a lodge on H. Marker Lake. It was a place where people would fly to Bethel. They could get organized. And then, as I said, we did float trips. We moved to Bethel because of the Kieseraulich River and the Queethlick.
When you say you moved there because of the rivers, because they're good fishing rivers?
Amazing rainbow fishing rivers. 99% of our stuff was unguided. We were just outfitting people to do float trips.
Give them the boat and the raft.
The rowing frame,
all the stuff.
Tents.
And you drop them off and then...
Drop them off, then they float up.
I have so many questions about that because when I think of dropping someone off in these type of remote areas, like my initial thought is like, this person's from LA, or something. Like, what is the liability, and how? I mean, did you have some sort of a waiver, like, hey, hopefully you don't get eaten by a bear. I'll see you in 5 days. How does that work?
Yeah, I've had problems with a couple of people, but as the business grew, you get a group of people that go home and they're talking with the right people.
Yeah, because they're the right person. They have friends that are the right person.
Correct.
Right clientele.
And so as the business matured, then you got the right clientele.
You've owned a lot of, or you've started a lot of outfits, but I think some of those, sometimes when you start an outfit like that, it's like you're the man working, and sometimes it's hard to exit in a way that's profitable.
Great question. When I first started in Bethel, there was no way to support an operation without some positive cash flow. So we built duplexes out there. So we had 3 duplexes that supported our operation.
Your aviation habit.
Yep.
Did you do that on financing, or did you pay cash for it?
I got that money from Wells Fargo, I think. At the time, there was such a housing shortage in Bethel that the state had money available at 5% down, 5% interest if you rented to school teachers, public safety officers, government employees.
That was super cheap back then, huh? I mean, what was the interest rate? Like 12%?
It was high.
Yeah.
And so we borrowed enough money to build 3 duplexes, and then we rented to police officers and stuff.
What a perfect business, by the way. It's like, yes, we'll give you cheap money to do this thing, and then you have to rent to the most stable people in town.
Yes, it was perfect. So that's how we got that going. And then we built a hangar, and we really didn't build it for us. We built it as big as we could, and we built it because we saw the Learjet for Life Med coming to Bethel all the time, and it would be froze up. And then
inevitably, they're going to need a place to put that thing.
Okay, so we built a Beaver just perfect size to put a Learjet in. Okay, so I eventually leased the hangar to Life Med.
You're like really smart in the sense that you're like, okay, if I just go to Bethel and fly for an airline, a 135 outfit just to get hours so I can get a job or whatever, that's one thing. But you're kind of more entrepreneurial, and you go and you buy your own airplane and you get contracts, and then you're sort of taking advantage of every opportunity that's available to you to build up something that's sellable in the end.
Exactly. I got going with the native allotment. That's how, I don't know if we talked about this. The reason I went to Quigilligock my first summer was because of during the pipeline days, I might get some of the details wrong because it's been so many years, but the natives were given land if they went and staked it out. Mm-hmm. And to get title to the land, it had to be surveyed. So I got a contract to go haul the surveyors to fly out, and they would go survey the land and put monuments in.
Yeah.
And then I got going at Lake Hood, run my business at Lake Hood, and then hauled deer hunters to Montague Island. That was more dangerous than herring spotting.
Is that because of just the weather and the wind?
Weather and the water and the wind and the ice. And I was flying to Montague, and I was in my Beaver, and the wind was blowing 40, and the waves were huge. And I was on the way to Montague, and I landed on the beach, and it was glare ice, absolutely glare water on ice. And I touched down, and the airplane does a slow ground loop. And as I came backwards, I added power to stop it. Went full power when it was in reverse. Came in to stop in the reverse. And I looked at my hunters and I said, "You're my last people I'm ever flying to Montague. I'm done. I'll see you in 5 days." And I came back to Lake Hood that day, and I gave all my deposits for the rest of my hunters to Jayhawk Air. I was done. So I've been back to Montague, but never for money again. I'm done.
You were done.
I was done. My son was about 2 or 3, and I decided that I was going to be around to raise him.
I mean, in my business, I've done things that I didn't want to do. And I mean, it's nothing compared to that. But like, working 40 hours straight to get AOG back in the air, right?
Yeah.
At one point it was like, yep, I'm done doing that. Because like, I'm at the point where I don't have to anymore.
Yeah.
And when I watch guys like you in their career, and I go, these dudes haven't just worked long hours and maybe sniffed chemicals. Like they've actually put their life on the line for the same reason, to make a living.
Had to get it going.
got to get it going, doing what it takes, taking the risk, literally risk.
Yep.
You know, do you have something that you did during those years, like maybe leading up to that point, that you look back on and you're like, I can't believe that I took that risk intentionally? Like,
the toughest year was freeze up year. I think it was 1991 in Galena. It got 40 below, and I had 30 hunters out, and I'm on floats. And that year, the state made it legal to pick up hunters with helicopters.
because of this?
Because of it, they just made a flat rule: go get everybody. You can use any means you can use. The state made a rule. I picked up almost everybody with a beaver on floats that year, even though it was 40 below.
Where were you landing? On like frozen
Just
lakes?
on one group of people. I landed on the ice, and just before I got to the bank, it broke through.
Oh no.
So I didn't hit the bank. So all the people walked out on the ice. And so I got hooked on ropes on the heel of the floats and I think there's got 4 guys to pull on the rope as I added power, and it broke around so that I aimed out across the ice, and I added power and climbed up on top of the ice and took off across the ice.
So what, I have so many questions about that. Number one, when you break through the ice, what keeps you from freezing there solid? I mean, when you were taking off, were there
I was only going to stay for a few minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, were your floats coated in a coat of ice when you take off?
No, because they're in the water. The water's 33 degrees.
Okay.
So the floats are in the water.
But you have a small amount of time before you've got to turn and burn.
Got to get out of there. The answer is you got to get out of there.
Yeah.
So picking up that one, I thought was intimidating.
Yeah.
Okay, but that one worked out good. I could have hauled the people. I left them, and the helicopter had to get that group. But I could have loaded them up in hindsight, taken them out 2 at a time. Instead, I couldn't have got a gross load out of there. But on the Coteal, I had a group of people that were in an oxbow. And so I had to step turn the oxbow to take them off. And I loaded up, I think, 3 people and their gear and their raft. And I had to do a step turn takeoff in 2.5 inches of ice. So I was worried about the shards of ice tearing out the backside of my floats as I'm doing the step turn. So I get it airborne, and when I landed in Yukon back in Galena, I told everybody, okay, when we touch down, as soon as we touch down, take your seatbelts off and open the doors, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And they said, are we going to crash? Are we going to crash? I said, no, we're not going to crash. But as soon as we touched down, I want the doors open and I want your seatbelts off. And it didn't even hurt the floats. It was fine. I might have ripped the sprayer.
Oh, so you were worried landing that maybe you would damage the floats on takeoff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I did a step turn in an oxbow takeoff.
Yeah.
And
what was the circumference of this oxbow, do you think? Like, I mean, is it pretty?
It's pretty tight. Yeah, it was a tight oxbow.
That's incredible.
So I got back.
I can't think. I think the directional control of that is crazy to me.
Well, it's your air rudder.
Yeah.
Your water rudders don't do anything once you're in the step. It's all your air rudder. I think that's why spray rails, the angles that hold the spray rails are always weaker than the chines. So
what are the chines? What is the chine?
The chine is the pieces that the sides are riveted to. It's the angles.
Oh, right,
that
yeah.
the bottoms and the sides are
Makes
riveted
sense.
to.
So those will fail before the
You always put your
structural-
spray rails on with weaker material than your chines, so that if you rip your spray rails off in ice or whatever, that it breaks the attach hardware, not the chines, because the chines rip. Now you got your floats are wide open in the front. Super dangerous. I ripped off all the spray rails that way. And then there were no spray rails left. On that trip, I was in the Whitner River on that trip, and it was below zero. And I was picking up 4 hunters. It's my coldest flight of my life. I'm spinning the airplane around in the river. It's below zero. And I spun the airplane, and I have the rope on the cleat on the front. And I lean back on the rope for the airplane to spin, and I saw the loop come off the cleat, and I fell backwards in the water. So now I'm drenched, and I had to fly back to Galena. completely drenched and it's below zero. And that was my coldest flight of my life.
Okay, what gear do you wear on operations like that?
99% of the time I fly floats, I just wear boots. I don't wear hip boots. If you figure out how to work the current and the wind and stuff, only time you need hip boots is when it's a shallow beach and you can't get to the shore. I always have hip boots in the back.
Yeah.
But I was wearing winter boots. I was wearing warm clothes. So I would dress appropriately for the weather, even if you're flying floats.
Yeah. Let's talk about your teaching.
Yep.
I want to know about some of your philosophies with in regards to off-airport operations and how you get someone ready to do this as safely as possible.
Flying a tricycle gear airplane, if every time you take off, you do a soft field takeoff, so you get the nose wheel in the air and fly it down the runway till it flies, and then lower your nose slightly in ground effect, okay? And then clean up your flaps, and every time you land, you fly a perfectly square pattern and a square base, and you don't dogleg your finals. You fly straight in finals, okay? And then you do a soft field landing, and then you roll your aileron into the wind, and you leave it there till you come off the runway. If you build good habits like that, and then you get in a Super Cub, voila, it's easy. Okay, but if you can't fly a square pattern and you pull on the runway and you put your stick in the middle instead of pulling the runway and put the stick into the wind, okay? And if you land and as soon as you touch down, stick comes in the middle, okay? Now you're gonna have lots of trouble because you've built lots of bad habits.
Kind of like you land and you go, "Phew, I'm on the ground."
Correct.
Release.
Release. Correct.
Yeah, that's not-
okay. And when I get in the back seat of a Cub and I say, hey, we got 4 miles an hour from the right, so you're going to want to start out with your aileron all the way to the right. When they pull in the runway and they pull the stick in the middle, I know what their natural reaction is, stick in the middle. Okay? If they pull in the runway, they immediately put the stick in the wind, I know what their natural reaction is. So it starts with procedure. Okay?
Can you tell me why a square pattern is important?
If you fly a square pattern, now in your subconscious brain, you know, oh, I got a crosswind. I got a crab in my downwind. I got a crab on my base. Your subconscious mind goes, something's wrong here with the wind. So you don't have windsock, you don't have an ASOS, you don't have an ATIS, okay? Yeah. Your wind comes from leaves, the trees, okay? If the leaves are green, that means you've got a headwind. If the leaves are that yellowish color, that means you got tailwind.
Yeah.
So watching the leaves, everything you see is subtle though.
Yeah.
And your square pattern clicks in your mind. Oh, I got a crosswind.
When you're flying a pattern off airport, just by what you have to do to keep it square, you're already going to know what
your mind goes off of, oh, I got a problem.
Yeah.
It's not, if you got a crab on your downwind, well, you got a crosswind.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're going really slow on your downwind, you're going the wrong way. Okay. So if somebody's having trouble landing, they're bouncing their landings in a tail wheel, first thing I do is I teach them to fly patterns. Because you got to have a stabilized approach to have a good landing. And if you can't fly a square pattern, you can't fly a stabilized approach.
Got it.
So when you move off airport, a lot of people think, I'm off airport now, anything goes. No, now your procedures come super precise. Because if you don't fly a downwind and you don't fly a square base and you don't fly a straight in final, you just check 3 boxes. Okay? And it takes 3 or 4 boxes checked to have an accident. So you got to have all your procedures rigid so that you know when stuff's going wrong. Now, the second thing happens, people land on a small runway. They have a tight pattern. Now, tight pattern, got to turn base. When it's 45 behind to your thing, now you roll up and you go more than a 30-degree bank because you got a tight pattern. If you're not losing altitude and you turn a 45-degree bank, you're loading your airplane. Now your stall speed goes up. What I do is anytime you're off airport, I have people pick a final approach fix. It's a place that's directly in line with your final approach.
So a final approach fix is a place.
A place, a rock, a tree. It's something that's identifiable.
When you cross over that, you've got to be, everything has to be lined up.
It's a place for you to make a decision that if you're stabilized or not. Okay. Landing off airport, when am I stabilized? Okay. Oh, if I haven't got my checklist complete there, if I don't have my speed under control there, if I don't have my descent to my touchdown point under control there, okay, I have an unstabilized approach and I go around.
Do you have a checklist that you give people when you train them that has like those things listed? Or do you just train them to where they sort of automatically do it?
We pretty much train them. We train when you first look at a ridge or a gravel bar you want to land on. You pick your runway. You don't just land on the ridge. Pick your touchdown spot. You pick the place that your airplane is going to have the tail on the ground, that you're braking nicely, or your go-around spot. And then you pick your rollout spot. If you're not stopped and you have excess speed, whether you're going to roll to the right or roll to the left, or what you're going to do with your airplane, so you're not making decisions at the last minute. And then you always plan your go-around. Okay, if you're going to go around, where you're going to go? Are you going to turn downhill? You're going to turn into the wind? Is there obstacle problems? If you go around after you're below the trees, is there going to be a wind shear at the top of the trees? Then you go back and you pick your final approach fix so that your patterns are bigger. Small runway, can't have a small pattern. So that's where I came from my final approach fix idea. Is I was on the Jones River up in the Alaska Range, and I had a little piece of tundra I wanted to land on. And 4 times I turned final, and I couldn't find my piece of tundra until it went underneath me. And so I said, okay, if I fly down the river and I get by that rock, and if I follow the creek up, and I come by that tree, and at that tree, I'll turn right 10 degrees, I'll be on final, okay? And so I flew up the river, and I flew to the rock, and I came to the thing, I turned 10 degrees, and that was my final approach fix. Flaps were in, I was slow, and right in front of me was my runway. That's when I realized all the advantages of picking a final approach fix. It's a place to get your airplane set up. It's a place to make your decision, and it was a place to make you find where you want to land. It was a lead-in radial, so that you can figure out where you're landing.
Yeah.
So right there, all that stuff's instrument flying 101.
Yeah. How do you determine if you have a stabilized approach?
Okay, stabilized approach. I teach all landings are never steeper than a 3-degree glide slope.
You're saying you don't like the steep.
I don't like steep approaches,
Okay.
and let me explain why. Many flight instructors teach that you always want to be close enough to your runway so if your engine dies, you can land on it. I disagree completely. Engines die when you pull the power all the way off. Engines stay running when you have the power in. So I like a bigger pattern where I don't have to pull my power till my landing's assured. I like power on approaches until landing's assured. You have energy in 3 factors. You have energy in airspeed, you have energy in altitude, and you have energy in your throttle. Okay, we have complete control of the third. But if we come over our final approach fix that we talked about picking, the tree at 300 feet above our touchdown spot, and we have 3-degree glide slope, we pull our power all the way off, we're going to overshoot. Okay? If we come over our final approach fix, the tree laying across the river, okay, and we're 1.3 VSO plus 10, we're going to overshoot. Okay? But if we come in over our final approach fix, the tree across the river, the rock, whatever it is, come over that, and we're at 60 miles an hour, we're on, you look at the VASI, and the VASI is red over white. Everything just kind of going red. That means we're behind the power curve on speed. We're behind the power curve on altitude. And power, will get us to our spot and we'll never land log in our life. Okay? Coming down, you're on speed, you're slightly below glide slope. Okay? Chop your power, you'll hit your spot every time.
So you're playing the odds on the engine out, meaning if your engine does die, you're a little more screwed than the guy doing the steep approach, but you're saying it's less likely for it to die because you got power on. That's the one thing. And you're probably going to hit more, you're going to have less trouble landing in the long run. So it's like you're playing the odds, sort of.
Absolutely. And the odds are in the favor of the guy that lands on his spot every time.
The conversation in general aviation around safety is you got to follow these set of rules. Like steep approach, always do these checklists and things. But I think in off-airport, suddenly you've got so many factors playing in, you have to really think and choose which risks you're going to take and which ones you're not. So my point is there's so many people out there that would disagree with you, and they just follow that blindly rather than kind of doing the math and saying, we're going to take risks. There's going to be risks no matter what. Which risk are we going to take?
The theory that you want to be close enough to your runway to land, if your engine dies, then you're going to stay in the pattern your whole life.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay? The odds of your engine dying the second that you are abeam your numbers are minuscule.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
1 in billions. The odds of you wrecking in your whole career, if you don't know how to land on your spot you pick, are really
Huge.
high.
Yeah.
There's only a few seconds that if you chop somebody's power, they can land on that runway. And people have trouble, if they lose it exactly the perfect spot, they have trouble doing it anyway. So I don't even buy that as safety. The chances of you losing your engine at the place that you can make the runway is minuscule. Okay, unless
my thought about this too is, okay, we've got a 450-foot runway, and we're going to stay within glide of it so that we can hit it without power. Like that seems nuts to me. You know what I'm saying? Like let's say we are within glide. So now without an engine, I'm going to hit a 450-foot obstacle where the end of it may be a cliff or something. Like, wouldn't it be better just to land in a less optimal landing zone that's like on the same river or something?
I agree with you. I also teach you always do your checklist, which includes pulling your carb heat out. Even if you're in Arizona and it's 100 degrees out, you got to get the procedure going. And I always, every time, pull my carb heat when I'm on final with the power on. So now, because it's making heat, there's heat to get rid of the carb ice.
Right.
But I always land with my carb heat cold, so I'm ready for a go-around. Okay? And there's lots of flight instructors that might disagree with that. But if you read the Lycoming 0320 operations manual, or the Lycoming 0360 operation manual, it says always land with carb heat cold so that you're ready for a go-around. Now, the reason people teach new pilots to land with carb heat hot is because that if you pull the power off, you got to be able to land on the runway. That means they're having to pull the power off all the way every time they land. If you have just a little bit of carb ice, now your idle is so low, the prop will stop. Okay? Literally stop. So the instructors that want their pilots to be so close they're rolling the power all the way off are also needing the carb heat on to keep it from dying. I disagree with the whole principle. I want a bigger pattern. I want power on. I want to pull the carb heat when the power's on so that there's heat to get rid of the ice. And when I'm over my final approach fix, I want to push my carb heat in so that I'm ready for a go-around.
You've got some margin on either side of the throttle, too.
Yes.
You can pull power back if you're too high, in addition to slip.
Or too low. I set my pitch, and I control stuff with power. Instead of many people teach you chase your airspeed with pitch and you're up and down with power. I set my pitch and I control everything with my power on my final.
Yeah, because that makes you stable.
Yep.
Versus doing.
Let me pull something back to our carb heat.
Yeah.
Another thing I teach. Anytime you pull the carb heat, your hand stays there. You don't get your hand back until you push it in. Because if you pull it and leave it hot and you get distracted, you have to go around. Most people forget to push their carb heat in because they're excited, they're distracted.
Yeah, this is all, the whole carb heat thing is, if I'm to follow your instruction, I definitely have to work on this because this is not in a habit to push it back in. I usually leave it out. So this is something that I need to work on.
I teach, if you pull the carb heat, your hand is occupied. Okay? It's occupied.
So if you need throttle, you push it back in.
Push it back in, now you get your throttle. I want it again. Anytime I pull my carb heat, my hand is occupied. Why is that? In my opinion, a go around is one of the most dangerous things there is. Okay? Not a go around. A go around when you're truly concerned and your heart starts beating for whatever reason is a very dangerous maneuver.
A lot of people have died doing
one of the most dangerous maneuvers, in my opinion, is go arounds. And you want all the power you got.
Can we talk about that? So your statement is the go around is one of the most dangerous maneuvers.
Yes.
And a lot of people say you can always go around. That's their statement. And I think that statement comes from landing on a big runway.
Correct. I think that's a cliche. You can always go around. You can always go around. You can always go around. And it's hard to get a scenario. It's hard to get somebody in a position where they're not expecting to go around. It's hard to get a person to get to where they're scared. Okay? Because as a flight instructor, it's starting to get dangerous. But when I've had people have to go around, I've found a multitude of errors. People want to go around, but they really don't want to. They really want to land so they don't add full power. Or people get rid of their flaps first before they add power. Or people add full power and they pull their nose up immediately, but they don't have the energy to do it, where they need to lower the nose and get the speed and then go around. But that rolls back to the carb heat. When you're excited and you got to go around, it's not in your procedure to push the carb heat in.
So do you have a no-go around point? And where is that?
Great question. Great question. If you bounce, go around.
Okay.
If you float past your touchdown spot, go around. If you are landing uphill, anytime I'm landing uphill, first of all, I fly downhill and I pick the elevation of my touchdown. So I'm doing my approach on my altimeter. If you set up your approach and you're lower than your altitude you want to touch down, you can't climb back to it without getting too slow.
Right.
Okay? So anytime I'm landing on a sloped surface, I always fly downhill first. I pick my elevation of my touchdown. Okay, I'm going to touch down at 2,200 feet, and now I'll climb up 100 feet. I'll fly a 2,300 foot pattern, and then on final, I'll let it come down to 2,200 feet, and then I'll come in with power and I'll land uphill. Now when I'm on final, I will say I can go around if I escape to the left or to the right. Yeah. I never have my airplane in a position where I have to out-climb terrain with power. I always have my airplane in a position where I can go around by descending. Okay?
And then but you have a point. Say if you're flying uphill, that you're like, when I fly over this place,
and I say it out loud to myself, I cannot go around anymore. I'm committed to landing. Okay, I say it outside.
You say I'm going to land no matter what.
I'm landing. Okay, but I've already run my skis or my wheels downhill. I already know it's smooth. I already have my altitude of touchdown. I've now done my pattern. When I'm on final, okay, I can turn left and go downhill. I can turn left and go downhill. Now I can't go downhill because I always want to be able to go downhill on my go around. Okay, go around doesn't mean climb. Okay, go around means escape. I'm going to go turn left and go downhill. And I always land high enough up the mountain that if I touch down and I'm stuck, I can turn the airplane around by hand and go downhill. Okay? I never land at the bottom of a slope thinking I'm going to power to the top.
Yeah.
I always touch down high enough that if I touch down and the snow comes over the windshield and I'm so deep that I'm stuck, that I can get out and snowshoe, turn the airplane, and go downhill.
There's so much patience involved in that kind of flying, I feel like. You know what I mean?
It's fun.
It is fun. But it's like if you cut one corner, it'll totally screw you.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. On a no-go round, what people would call a no-go round strip, maybe uphill in the mountains or something, you would have a final approach fix and then a point where you make a decision, right?
Great question. Great question. If I'm landing on a glacier that's sloping, if I decided my touchdown spot is 2,200 feet, my final approach fix is at 2,300 feet. It's an altitude, not a position, okay? When I'm at that altitude on base, I've got to, I'm not gonna go full flaps, okay? I'm gonna only do a approach flap landing because it's landing uphill, but I'm gonna have my checklist complete. My gas is gonna be on both, undercarriage or skis down, mixture's rich. Great question, okay? I don't always land mixture rich if I'm landing at 6,000 feet.
Right. Mixture set.
Mixture set.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I find out where the mixture is on my finger so that on my takeoff, I know where to set it. Because on takeoff, if you have mixture rich on takeoff and you're at 8,000 feet elevation, you're throwing 20% of your horsepower away.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I'm landing,
And it's not easy to set that on the ground.
nope, I do it before I land. I find out where my most horsepower is before I land, and then I might push it in just slightly richer than that, and then I leave it there. Then I know where it's at in case I kill my engine with my mixture. Okay, I know where my takeoff.
Okay, so my question is your final approach fix and your no-go round point. Would you say there's a no-go round point, a point where you decide I'm
landing, absolutely.
So is that after the final approach
Absolutely.
fix?
Absolutely. Final approach fix, you're configured, you're stabilized. Okay, I can turn left, I can turn left. That is a terrain thing. When I'm in the mountains, I never trust my horsepower to outclimb anything. I always have my airplane in a position that I can lower my nose and outrun the terrain, not outclimb it.
I feel like that's huge because it's almost like there's such a huge variance in what your horsepower is going to do at different altitudes, at different conditions, that it's like you never can trust it.
Never in the mountains do I trust my horsepower to outclimb anything.
Yeah.
It's always outrun it. I always offset from where the water would be flowing if there was water, that I can turn around without crossing the center line.
Yeah.
Because if you cross the center line, you now are flying into rising terrain.
Do you need airspeed to be above a certain point? You know, I mean, like
Turn radius goes up by the square of the speed.
Right. But airspeed's, but the airspeed is good, right? If like say you're flying 90, right? And you maybe want to turn at 70 to lower the radius, but it's still good to have that airspeed because you can always slow down. Okay.
Because I never do a chandelle to turn around in the mountains.
Right.
I always do a lower the nose. Okay? So I always want to go downhill. A chandelle, now you can't see what you're doing. You're getting slow. Chances of stall spins huge. So if I have to turn around, I either have to be slow so that I can lose altitude to turn around, or I got to be fast enough that I can safely turn around. But you got to be careful. Those two things are oxymorons because your turn radius goes up by the square of your speed. Okay? So altitude's the best. But if you're really low, because the weather's bad, you got to be going slow. Otherwise, you can't turn around without crossing the thread of the river.
Speaking of out climbing, I mean, we're talking about landing on upsloped runways with no go round. I've had 2 times, because everyone's always told me, don't get below your touchdown point. And it's so easy to get behind the power curve on those types of approaches. And I've had that happen twice where I was full power, carb heat, cold, And I'm like,
Trying to get to your touchdown point.
I'm going to make it, I think, and barely make it to the touchdown.
And
or touchdown short.
That's because you didn't pick an altitude.
Right?
Fly
Totally.
downhill.
Absolutely.
Touchdown altitude 2,500 feet. Climb up to 26. Fly your pattern. Final approach fix is on base. Turn final. Slight descent to your touchdown point. As you round in, come out with power and touchdown with power on.
Obviously, I got too slow, but that's a symptom of being too low. Right? I mean,
And I've been there, I've done it. Jacob and I were landing up in the Torjollas, about 8,000 feet, and I didn't fly it downhill because I'm following Jacob. And he went straight in. He didn't fly it downhill. And so I went straight in without knowing my elevation. I'm too low because when you're above any trees,
it's impossible.
As soon as if you have alders and trees, you have depth perception.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get in the mountains and you're above the trees, the rock, how big is the rock?
Who knows?
There's no depth perception. You don't know how far you are away. All perception goes away. And I ended up low, and I'm at 8,000 feet, full power. Okay, trying to get up the mountain enough if I get stuck that I have enough below me to take off. And I ran out of airspeed and options and everything. Hit, I'm stuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all because I did just what you said. I didn't fly downhill, didn't pick my landing altitude. My approach was too low. I got past my go-around spot. Okay, now I hit the mountain, I'm stuck.
So we already talked about this, but small patterns on small runways. You're for big patterns, on small runways, because you have more time to assess the situation.
Here's the main reason I'm for big patterns on small runways. Okay, the stall spin accident happens downwind to base and base to final. Okay, and the stall spin accident happens because of skidding turns. If you're in a left bank and the ball is low, that is a slip. And we came up with the saying, ball low, you can go slow. Okay? Anytime you're in a left bank and the ball is high, that's a skid and you're going to die. In our whole career, every time we turn downwind to base, we're turning left, we step on left pedal. Just natural.
Yeah.
And when we turn base to final, we turn left, we step on left pedal. Okay, bring that scenario down to a tight pattern. Tight pattern, we're not at 1,000 feet, we're at 400 feet.
And in order to hit our point, we got to go slower sooner.
Yep. So now we're at 400 feet instead of 1,000 feet. Now 45 degree to our touchdown point comes quick. So we go into a 45 degree bank. Now we're at a low altitude. 45 degree bank, we pull 1.25, 1.3 Gs. So our 2,000 pound Super Cub now weighs 2,300 pounds. A 2,300 pound airplane in a turn starts losing altitude. So what do? We add power.
Oh my gosh.
Okay?
Everything's working.
Okay, add power. What happens to power? Got to step on right pedal. Okay, we're stepping on the left pedal. Ball's high, so now the stall speed, instead of the published 43 mile an hour stall speed of a Super Cub, okay, is now about 48 or 50. The airplane stalls and goes into a spin because the ball's high. That's what causes the skidding turn downwind to base and base to final.
Yeah. So doing a larger approach is pretty much solves all those issues. You have more time.
You're higher.
Yeah.
My rule are 30 degree banks. When I'm flying a Super Cub, 99% of the time, I never want more than a 30 degree bank. Now, the only time you're going to go into a 30 degree bank is if you have to get into a place, you have to go into a steep turn to get around a corner or something. And if you're doing that, you have to be losing altitude. So let's roll back. All my Cub flying is 1G. So to do 1G, you have to either be limited to a 30 degree bank, or if you're pulling more than a 30 degree bank, you have to be losing altitude. But everything you do in a Cub better be a 1G maneuver. That's why one reason, roll back to early talking. I don't want a steep approach. If you have higher than a 3-degree glide slope, at the bottom, you'll pull more than a G. So now your stall speed increases, okay? Because your airplane's heavier. So everything's 1G maneuvers, okay? So that's why I like a nice flat approach. Now at the bottom, it's less than a G when you do your flare. That's why I want less than 30-degree banks. Now everything's 1G maneuver. I had one client that I taught to fly, and he said, man, I want to start landing off airport, bush stuff. And I said, I will take you and teach you where to fly, start doing this stuff when you can touch down in between the runway and identifier lights at Lake Hood Strip every time you come in and land. You got to do it every time. I don't care with the wind blowing. And once you can come back and you tell me you can touch down the same spot every time for 2 weeks, then it's time. And he went out and had an accident, and he came back and he said, now I know what you meant, okay? And
So he didn't follow your instruction.
didn't follow my instruction, landed in place, he was high, hot, and overshot, touched down, not enough room, tried to go around.
Too bad.
Couldn't go around because he's going uphill. He understood what I said. Now he's an amazing pilot.
Let's talk a little bit about your business, Acme Cub Training.
Yep.
If someone wants to get in touch with you and train with you, are they going to train with you specifically?
I do less and less training all the time. Right now, this summer, I'm going to have 4 or 5 instructors.
Good.
Plus myself.
So all these philosophies in this learning, you are sort of top down training that to your guys.
That's all we talk about.
Yeah.
It's what we teach. I've given everybody that instructs for me lots of dual instruction. It's the attitude that we just have impermeated in our places. All of this stuff is an attitude. It's a way of life. It's a feeling. We're not cowboys. Everything's methodical.
I love that. In addition to training in cubs, you build them.
Yes, I do.
And that's something that you're, I think, maybe even more passionate about than training.
And that comes from, I've operated cubs now for a long time. I've figured out what they need and what they don't need and what makes them comfortable and what makes them useless. And I've come up with a combination that makes it a very usable airplane.
Okay, so someone buys an airplane from you. What all does that come with? I'm not saying in the price, but to me, it comes with more because it's coming from you.
It comes with my reputation, and it comes with the past history of success.
Yeah. So it comes with a track record. And then what about, do you have a passion for training these people not to wreck their cub?
That's why we're successful. Not only do we go give people 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 hours after they bought an airplane, but it's a lifelong thing. People will call me and say, hey, my airplane's doing this.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, I want to go in here. What are the dangers? It's a relationship that lasts forever, not just a one-time event. Oh, here you go fly your Cub, you know.
I think that's the benefit of something that's a high ticket item like that. Is, you know, it's not like you're selling hundreds a year.
No.
You know, and so there's a low number of people in the grand scheme
that are in
of
the
things.
fraternity.
They're in a fraternity, a very exclusive club that probably has your cell number and.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I think that's giant, and let me explain why. Since I've been an airplane owner, one of the biggest things I've struggled with, and there needs to be like a course on this that's taught, airplane ownership. How to be an airplane owner. You're the curator of a museum piece. You know, 1961. Last airplane was in 1947. I'm a curator of this museum piece, and I have to take care of it. And I'm not certified to do that. I have to go out and find the people to do the thing. One guy doesn't do fabric work. Another guy doesn't really like working on, you know, instruments or whatever. And so it's like going to see a doctor. It's like you got your general practitioner and you've got your specialists. Taking care of an airplane is a big deal. If you've never owned an airplane before, it's a skill to learn.
That brings up a great topic. Super Cub has immense amount of stuff you can put on them. And if you put all the stuff on a Super Cub that everybody says makes it fly better, it probably wouldn't fly at all.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? And so, because we've been around it so much, we can give people great advice on what's worth the time, what's worth the money, what's worth the weight, and what's the negatives. Okay?
Right.
A great thing is 3-inch forward gear. Okay? Everybody that wants to win Valdez has 3-inch forward gear. But if you put it on skis, 3-inch forward gear, now your tail weighs 200 pounds, you get stuck, you can't go lift your tail. It's impossible to lift. And your tail feathers now are riding in the snow. And so you're going to tear up your tail feathers, even if you got tail ski back there. Everything that's there for a Cub also has a negative. That's what we can tell you, the advantages and the disadvantages of everything that's out there.
What everyone needs that's going to go buy an airplane is a mentor.
Mentor to tell them you need 35-inch tires. Well, if you're going to fly around and you're landing on paved runways in Utah all the time, well, maybe you don't need 35-inch tires.
It's someone to go tell them to do those 100 landings at Lake Hood.
Exactly.
Yeah. I really appreciate you
Cool.
coming here. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. It's been a pleasure working with you on this,
That's
all
good.
these projects we're
Thanks.
doing. I can't wait for more of it. Do we have enough? Do we need to do another take? Let's do it another take. Steve, thanks for coming in today.
Okay, where we starting?
Yeah, so thank you for coming in. Tell me about your history.